Well, thank you everybody for logging in and being part of this first Zoom podcast jobby that I'm doing. And we're going to talk a little bit about the history of rock and roll in Windsor and where it all started. And you're welcome to ask any kind of questions you want. I know Rob Miller, previously of CBC, he had knows just about everything there is to know about music. I see him at all the big events, and it was a real pleasure to do some shows with him when I was with Crime Stoppers. But my name's Ken Koekstat. I've been I'm an old guy, and I've been doing music since back in the 60s. And as I recall, going back, what inspired me was my mother played piano, and she wanted me to play piano, and it really wasn't my cup of tea. So what happened was I went to a teen dance. I was about 13 or 14, went to a teen dance, and I had always had an interest in music. Of course, Elvis Presley set all the standards. And I went to a teen dance, and lo and behold, there was my paper boy playing at St. Gilbert's Hall in the town of Tecumseh and doing the guitar. And all the girls, they all swayed back and forth. I don't want to make you seasick, but they went back and forth like Ricky Nelson on television. And when I saw the girls standing in the front row, I got to get me a guitar. So I went out and got me a guitar. And it was a real beauty, a really nice Gibson. Heinzman's used to have they made pianos, of course. They had a music store on Olette Avenue downtown. And so they picked me up a guitar that's worth probably about $7,000 now, but they got it for me for $50. And so I practiced away. And I'd watch shows on TV, dance parties. They had a local show here, Bud Davies dance party. And his father was a minister, but it was on Channel 9, the big CKLW. And I was dating a girl who was a little bit older than me. I was 11. She was 13, 14. And she got me on the show. You were supposed to be a teenager to be on this dance party, but I faked my way through it because I was tall. And Bill Haley and the Comets were performing, and they had the Hello Michael Herford, and they had the little curl on the forehead and doing Rock Around the Clock. And so that goes back just a few years. And so anyways, my dad had got laid off, and we had to move. And so we moved to Toronto for a period of time. And I was sort of lonely. So I would stay in my room, and I'd play guitar and play guitar and play guitar. I came back to Windsor, and I decided that I would go to business college. And so he was a wonderful young man. We both graduated at the same time, and he had told me he was a drummer, and I'd never heard him play drums, but he told me he was a drummer. And he had a new job working for a brokerage company. It ended up that I got my first job through him. He goes, now that we're both working, I'll buy drums, you buy an electric guitar, and we're going to make rock and roll here in Windsor. So we got a little band together. And of course, the police came all the time to his mother's house. We rehearsed at his mother's. And the police come for noise complaints because we were always playing at 9 and 10 o'clock, driving the poor fella's mother crazy. But we finally got a group together. We advertised in the paper. And by this time, a new DJ had come on the scene, Robin Seymour. And he also had a fella named Bozo the Clown. And Bozos were franchises from all over. You could be a Bozo in Chicago. You could be a Bozo in Los Angeles. And he got to be Bozo first in Windsor before me. I really never made it as a real official Bozo. But in any event, the fellow that danced on their show all the time knew Bozo the Clown. Bozo the Clown used to do teen dances, and he was a disc jockey, and he would hire us. And it was what for all the teen dances. So it was pretty wonderful that we had an inn there. Back in the days of Motown in Windsor, what they would do is all the Motown artists, there were tons of Supremes, Four Tops, the Temptations. There were so many, and they would get them to come out to the sock hops, and they would get a live band to play music. The live band would play music for 40 minutes. And one of my first gigs was with, as a warm-up, we got $25 for the whole band for 5 people, $5 a person. I said, well, that's pretty good, because minimum wage was only $1 an hour at the time. So I just got paid 5 hours worth of work for 40 minutes. And I said, what about the young kid on the end of the stage here sitting down? They said, well, that's little Stevie Wonder. And how much is he getting? And they said, well, he's not getting any money, but they're going to play his record over and over and over, and he's going to be a really big star. So the reason they had him there was he would lip sync before Milli Vanilli people came out. The rock stars or the rock people would lip sync, and it would only take 4 or 5 minutes because they only had a couple hits. Martha Reeves, the Vandellas, they were all just starting at the time. So people don't realize that people like little Stevie Wonder, who's now big Stevie Wonder, played in little towns like Belle River, Ontario, Belle River. And it worked out good. My daughter said, what happened to you, Dad? She goes, Stevie Wonder is big and famous. And she goes, how come you're not big and famous? I said, well, there's only one thing holding me back was talent. And then we would play, back in those days, they had teen clubs. There was the Kitten Club and the Purple Pad, the Intersection, all these various nightclubs in Windsor. And they would bring in big name bands who were just starting. They bring in Ted Nugent, the Amboy Dukes, Bob Seger, before they became famous and did it up, right? And that was a big thing, going to these teen clubs. You were supposed to be 18. They didn't have any alcohol or anything. It was just teen clubs. So they were a lot of fun, and we would get to warm up for bands like that and have a good time. But you never got to meet the people because you were so busy getting your equipment off the stage that you were in a hurry and hurry up, get off the stage. We got the real entertainment that's coming up. And I remember one time in Kingsville and used to have a pavilion there. All the places had a lot of pavilions. That's when we had a little bit cleaner water. And I was a warm up for Paul Revere and the Raiders. And they had all their equipment there. And they had the pirate hats. And I was so excited. I said, boy, I'm going to stick around and see them Paul Revere and the Raider fellas. And they come out and they lip sync too. But they had the equipment. And a lot of people didn't know that they weren't really playing. It was more musicians really knew because all the girls were going, woo, woo, and all excited. They forgot that they weren't really playing the music and only had 2 hits that took 5 minutes. So we would play all those various venues. And back in those days, it's probably the same in Sault Ste. Marie and Ottawa and all the various places. There was so much work for bands. They were everywhere there wasn't anywhere that you could go that you couldn't see groups. They had jam sessions during the daytime. And a lot of famous people came out of, I did have one little brush with a famous personality was Shania Twain. And the one thing that Shania Twain and I have in common, I'm sure you've all heard of Shania Twain, she was born in Grace Hospital, the same hospital as me, except I got there first. And she was smart enough to move to Timmins and became obviously a great big huge superstar. But lots of fun playing all the different venues. And they had band contests and all the teenagers would want to be in bands. And it's still like that in some cases, like the one chap that's tuned in, Michael Herford, has a phenomenal band called the British Beat. And they do all English tunes. They take pride in what they do. and everybody wanted to be better. So you would go, and I used to sneak into the nightclubs because I was tall, and they'd ask me, do you have your ID with you? And I said, well, you didn't ask last week, so I should be good this week. And we go in and watch the bands play. And finally, we got our group going a little bit together. And just as we got really going, it came an opportunity to play in a nightclub. And I was underage. And but I said, wow, $20 a night take home. This is almost as good as working at Chrysler's for 40 hours doing a really hard task. So we were playing 6 nights a week and getting big money. And I worked during the day, 5 days a week. And in doing that, we all got the outfits. And of course, we were only there a few months. We were hired for the whole year, only there a few months, and the police came in and caught the drummer's girlfriend underage. And they said, who are you there with? And she goes, I'm with the drummer. And so they came up to us, they were very nice, and said, you have to get another drummer. We'll let him finish the week out. At least that's what they told me, because I was with the keyboard player who was underage as well. And we were hiding in the bathroom. We went into the men's washroom and were hiding out there so that they wouldn't have us leave too. And then we got a tour bus and we toured in the United States. But we used to get all these jobs as a warm-up group. And everywhere you went, there was live music. And the difference between now and then, just for a bit of history, is they used to get bands and they'd have the bands there for weeks, months, because they would all follow in and say, well, it was consistent entertainment. And they changed that format around to figuring that, well, we'll get this band for a week, next band or a night. Back in those days, some pretty famous people played. The one club in Amherstburg, Ontario, they had Count Basie Orchestra was there. And so it was pretty good. They had some other nightclubs in town, the Elmwood, and the Elmwood Casino brought in Sonny and Cher, Tom Jones, Joey Bishop, Sammy Davis. They brought them all in, and a host of musicians performed, backing them up. And they also had Ricky Nelson in at this other club. And back a few years ago, they had me do a ride along saying, well, there used to be a club here, there used to be a club there, and here and there, and they had an afternoon jam session, and they're all gone. All those clubs are all torn down. And now, for the history of rock and roll, they expect the band to bring your following. They don't want to advertise. Marquee boards are not essential, or they put steak dinner. And we say, gee whiz, I wonder who that steak dinner plays in that steak dinner band. So we continued on through that. And back in the 60s, Polaris Recording here in Windsor was one of the first. They were in the basement of a nightclub called the Embassy, not too far from where my cousin John was residing at the time. And they brought in bands like Bob Seger and Leslie West and the Mountain Band and Spirit. There were a lot of fun, and a lot of very, very talented people came out of Windsor. We have bands such as Big Sugar with Gordie Johnson and Kelly Hoppy. Big Sugar, Gordie Johnson, we jammed a few times years ago at a club here in town, and went on to producing records. The band Tease, if you ever saw the fellow on TV, Marco Braddock, the Pawn Man. He used to do a Canadian TV version of The Pawn Shop. And there was Mike Koekstat, Chuck Price, Brian Danter, and Tease. They played at El Macombo. They warmed up at Maple Leaf Gardens for Cheap Trick, a lot, and Montreal Forum for Journey and Foreigner, very famous. Most recently, the Tea Party, and a cute little story about the Tea Party. They're alternative, you might say, music rock alternative. And the drummer's father went out and got equipment. And he goes, when the boys aren't using the equipment, we're gonna get the equipment. And he recruited me as a guitar player, singer to play in the band. And when they're not using the equipment, we'll use it. And so we got sort of busy after that because he knew I had played for a while. And the one fellow, the drummer for the band, they played Sarstock going back. So I don't know how many people were at Sarstock. I think a couple 100,000. But when they were first starting up, they asked me to be a judge of a band contest that they had entered. And lo and behold, that's the last time I'll ever do judging, because they brought in a band that was a little bit more seasoned, a little bit older. And they were only like 13 or 14, and they were excellent players. But this other band were just had the drop on them. They were a little bit older, a little more experienced, and they didn't win the band contest. The older fellows did. And then lo and behold, now the Tea Party, the main singer, Jeff Martin, is living in Australia now, and they're huge, playing shows and sold a bazillion records. And I think that's more than 1 million. Other fellows that started out, and everybody, when they start out as a young musician, they say, I'm going to be a musician, not realizing how tough it is. And the one fellow that did that started out on guitar, and he all of a sudden he picked up the flute and started playing the flute. Alexander Zonchik, a big jazz fellow, and he ended up playing at Carnegie Hall. So he really did follow his dream. He owned, maybe still does, own a nightclub in Detroit. And he really was true to his profession. In 1970, a chap came over from England and they introduced me. It's hard to believe that it's 52 years ago. His name was Joe Konas. And he got to jam with people too. He got to jam with Jimi Hendrix, of all people. He was from England, and Jimmy had gone to England. So Joe was playing with people that played with Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Uriah Heep, and a lot of people. And Joe came here in instant success. He started up a music school and has taught almost every guitar player. A lot of people here in Windsor, done very well. And he has a lovely daughter who plays bass guitar with him now. So he did extremely well coming here to Canada. Then they had some TV shows going back in Windsor days. They were called Behind Bars. And that was sort of a cute little show where they went to various bars, and they weren't really behind bars like they are in some of the cities. They were TV shows in bars. And host Danny Bonk, who was a high school teacher and a musician, was the host. They had another across Canada show originated here, the Fame Game, and they had bands from all across Canada performing. And that was in the early 80s.
I can't see.
And then they had another show. He became a big time fellow here in the community, Jack Gennaro, a real estate man. And he started out with me at Sock Hops. And we weren't allowed slippers. You weren't allowed to have regular running shoes on the gym floors, or you would be in big trouble. And he started playing in bands, got into real estate, and he also was doing music. Has a recording studio now, and his son had a big record, The Never Ending White Light, and it was a big hit. And so it's taken the path of a lot of people that it has to be true passion. You have to really want to do it and put your heart into playing music. There were clubs in Detroit. It's hard because I'm up in years here. I'm going to be 75 this summer. But I remember going to shows at the Detroit Olympia to see the Rolling Stones for $6.50. Eric Clapton with the Cream, $6. Actually, I didn't even want to go see the Stones. I wanted to see B.B. King play The Thrill Is Gone. And I went to see him as the main attraction. And turns out that he was the warm-up act for the Rolling Stones, both bands for $6.50. Then all of a sudden, something happened to music worldwide, and they got into big venues. Back in the day, there were hippie clubs in the 70s, the Grandy Ballroom and the Easttown Ballroom, and the fellas would open their coats up and they had all drugs and all kinds of paraphernalia at these places. But there'd be people like Rod Stewart, and you could walk up and say, "Hi, Rod, how are you doing?" It was that old movie theaters that they had converted into nightclubs. And I just keep kicking myself because I should have went up to Rod Stewart and asked him for an autograph. They had Joe Cocker, Chicago, all the bands. And of course, we have a girl here living now in Windsor. She was in Calgary for a while, Sally Chappis. And she was a drummer for David Clayton Thomas, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Here's the little girl, Sally Chappis, 19 years old. I remember her. And she goes from being the 19-year-old to playing with Blood, Sweat, and Tears and David Clayton Thomas band back in the day. So it achieved quite a bit of success. But the nightclubs, and what a lot of people don't know for history in Windsor, is you heard about the band Nirvana and Kurt Cobain. Well, there was a Nirvana in Windsor back in the 60s that had a group called Nirvana, and they played the teenage club. They played this one club called the Purple Pad, and it was, you had potato chips and you had Pepsi and a few things, and you had so much fun. And all the guys, I don't know if it happened like this in Schreiber or all the different places, but the boys walked around the outside of the dance hall, and all the girls would dance fast, and the fellas would go around and look and maybe wait till a slow song came on to get a bit of nerve girl to have a slow dance. But if you were really smart, you learned how to dance fast as a boy. A fellow named George Hello started the Polaris Recording here in Windsor, and now it's branched out. His son has that. It's branched out. They have Mark Planky, Walter Riggy has become producing some very good products. The one fellow, Walter Riggy, how it started out with him, he worked at a music store, and I came to know him, and he told me that he took his car in to get it repaired, and the fellow wouldn't give him his car back. So he goes, "Could you help me? You're a policeman in your real life, and could you help me out?" So I went down and talked to the fellow, and the fellow decided that he would give him the car back. And so when he got the car back, it come time for me to take over a program called Crime Stoppers. And he said, "You got to make videos and do your own videos." It used to be a professor, then it was a teacher's aide, and then it was the kids, and now it's you. And I didn't know one end of a camera from another. So this fellow was a young fellow in high school. I goes, "You're my new video guy." So he ended up doing video, and he's been judging things for the Juno Awards, all from right here in Windsor. So that's pretty good. They honor some musicians. There's Focus, some sites that people can go to. Focus on Canada South, and it features various people from the community, actors, musicians, entertainers from the community each month. They do a very nice job. And there's another one, the Windsor Detroit Oral History of Music. And they put various pictures on. So because I'm sort of like a investigator, I go to these sites and dig up pictures of all these bands. And I look back when I got a late start. I was 17 or 18 when I started playing in a band at the YMCA. And it turned out that this young man that hired the band, his brother was, I worked with him as a policeman. They had all these bands, and over the years, there was always just a few people that would stay true to the art form and keep playing and keep at it. And I look back now here in Windsor, and there's maybe 20, 30 people that are still playing, and not because of COVID, but used to playing every Friday and Saturday, 6 nights a week, 4 nights a week, play. I used to play 54 weeks a year. And my daughter, she said, how do you handle this COVID, being at home? Like, how will you know what day it is if you don't go play in the band on Friday and Saturday? And as I mentioned previously, Michael Herford and the British Beat Band, he had his daughter singing with him. It was wonderful. I had my daughter singing with me. She goes, I don't like working at Burger King. I want to be a singer in your band. So I said, well, you better audition and let me hear what you can do. And she knocked my socks off. So it was great. I got all the older people. She got all the younger people, and we'd always have a full house. And that was the same with Michael. And it gave us a different perspective on music, on keeping up to date on trends. So they had a lot of music stores in Windsor. Rennie's was the little music store. And when you had that, you had a little booklet. You could never afford to buy a guitar cash. It was only a few $100s, but back in those days, it was big money to get an electric guitar or a drum kit. So they had this little booklet, and you would sign up and you go and pay your $9 each week, or every couple of weeks you pay a $9 and they check it off and initial it. So it was a lot of fun doing that. There's a wonderful book. It's probably in the library. It's sold out. It was written by Owen Jones, a music entertainment editor. He was the editor in the music department, wrote a book, Music from Windsor. And it's a beautiful book. He covered the days of the back in the roaring 20s and the 30s and all kinds of pictures. And I was fortunate enough that he had me in the little book. And it was very nice. And I'm glad that I bought a copy, because I'd be out of luck if I didn't. And we had a fellow, maybe for the Canadian folks that are on here, would remember, this is the last song I'll ever. And I don't sing it that well, but it was written by Edward Bear. And a fellow from Kingsville, Ontario, wrote or played bass on that song. He also had a band called New Potatoes. Oh, and then we had another artist from Windsor, Stacy Hayden. And he used to come out with his older brother, Stu Hayden, a very, very good players, guitar and bass. They would come out and ask my band, can we sit in and play? And I'd say, sure, go ahead. Help the younger guys out. So here it is, 2 years later, I go to this nightclub, the fella's there playing in the band. And I goes, oh, I haven't seen you in a while. He goes, well, I've been on tour. I goes, who with? He goes, oh, David Bowie. So he went from coming out to play with little Kenny Koekstat, a nobody, to being on stage with David Bowie and touring Germany and all over Europe. So did very well. And he had a couple of hits with other bands. And he produced another local artist, Michael Patrick. Michael Patrick had a few hits. He has 5,000 people on Facebook. And he's a tremendous artist. He had a few albums out and toured England and all leaving Little Windsor, Ontario. And he was in Florida for quite some time, playing in England and throughout the United States. So very, very great. We've got a fellow right now, Dusty D'Annunzio, young fella. He's maybe, well, I'm not sure how old he is, but he's young. Everybody's young now when I look at them. But he's out playing, and who would think, I know probably nobody is aware of this, but a band called Grand Funk sold out Shea Stadium in New York faster than the Beatles. Sold it out. And so Mark Farner, the band broke up. Mark Farner, the lead singer for the band, here in the 1970s, all the bands, you could go to any bar and you'd hear them playing Grand Funk songs, Some Kind of Wonderful and all the tunes. Well, here's this fella, Dusty D'Annunzio. And here he is playing with Mark Farner, who lives in Flint, Michigan. So here he's on the upswing. I went to a place called Thunder Bay in 2015, and lo and behold, in 2015 there was a band also from Windsor, the Walkervilles. And I goes, well, how exciting is this? And they said, oh, it's pretty exciting because we just got done doing a tour with Derek Trucks and Susan Tedeschi. And so while I was in Thunder Bay, where it stays light till 11 o'clock in July, 11:30, it was wonderful. They had some entertainers there and got to share the stage with Paul Rogers from Bad Company, Johnny Reed, phenomenal entertainer, and of course the Tedeschi Trucks Band. And is that my good friend Chuck on there? I'm not sure. And we got another fella, Jody Rafool. He's from Leamington. So they spread it out throughout the county and try and make it pretty good. What's really nice is a fellow, he was born in the United States, but came here to work in Windsor at hospice. His name is Joe Perry. And he started up a program for people that were and members of families, the people that are afflicted with cancer, and started a band called the Wellness Band. And they would go out and perform at various events for charity. If they got any money for that, they would put that towards improving the band. And it was also, they started a junior program for children that had parents that were working through cancer. And so they invited me out to the big plaza here in Windsor, and they're a big band with horns, about 15 people. And I saw this young man, he was 9 or 10 years old, and he come out and did karaoke, and I goes, wow, is this kid ever good? And so I said to the band, I went over to his father first, and I said, has he ever been with a live band before? He said, no, never, just karaoke. And I said, well, how about I get him up on stage? So he goes, oh, he'd like that. So I sprung it on the band. I mentioned to them that when I had my 20 minutes of sitting in with them, that I'd change things up. So I brought this young man out. He goes, what are we going to do? I said, old time rock and roll. And I count 1, 2, 3, 4, and he comes. And so now he's in a band called Leave Those Kids Alone. And he's about 17 years old, plays with a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful band, and turned in to be a great singer. And he's teaching the young children whose parents have cancer, or maybe they're going through cancer themselves. He's doing guitar lessons for them. And as I mentioned earlier, the one fellow that was really important in my life that got me, we went to business college together. We were in our first band together. He helped get me my first job together. He called me up and he said, I'm dying of cancer. And he says, it finally caught up with me. He goes, I want your grandson to have my drums. And I said, well, my grandson's got a set of drums, and it's very nice that you offer. But I said, he's doing saxophone now. Perhaps an underprivileged kid, you could give it to an underprivileged kid. So this is how everything works in life. When you've been around a long time, everything goes around. So I hooked him up with the drummer of the Tea Party fellow, the father that had got me in the band, and he repaired the drums, and they gave it to the little girl that plays in the band with the boy that I started out on his music career. She turned around, took her drum kit and passed it on to another, actually, I think 2 drum kits, passed them on to underprivileged kids. So it was so nice that something good could come of that. And there was another fellow, they used to have clubs that were A, B, C, and D rooms. They'd have the A clubs where they were really busy, like the one I played at the Riviera, 650 people, 6 nights a week. It was thriving in the 60s, played there for the whole year. And this fellow that was running the nightclub, his step-parents, he was adopted. His step-parents owned the club. It was a motel nightclub, the Riviera. So the last night before we went to go on tour in the United States, we wanted to make it a memorable event. And we had seen the Who play. So we decided that we would destroy all our equipment too, like the Who. Break the guitars. Of course, we had got other guitars that weren't so costly. And we broke it all up, and the woman come out. She was all freaked out. She thought that, oh, the band's on drugs, not realizing that it was part of the show. We had people coming up wanting autographs on the broken pieces of guitar. And so it was a real memorable event. But all these places, they used to have them out in the county, out in the suburbs in LaSalle and Amherstburg, where they had the known, Amherstburg's well known for the War of 1812. And these clubs that I play at out there, they all had hidden walls. They said, oh yes, these clubs, boy, they're old. They have hidden walls where they used to hide the liquor behind there, the Chateau, the Sunny Side. And they used to have the Purple Gang and Al Capone used to come across, drive their cars across. That's when water was a little more pure then. And they drive their cars across the water because it would freeze over. And they would frequent the Windsor drinking spots during Prohibition. So that was pretty exciting. Right now, here in Windsor, we've got Rick Labonte, we've got Kevin Gagno, Chris Marentet, and Michael Herford. They're all recording their own CDs. It's become much easier now to do recordings and to get your product out. And what a lot of people don't realize is that when you go to a live show, I always purchase I'd have them sign pictures of the various people, entertainers, but I would always buy their product. And when they're at a show and they sell a product for $20, they get like $19 of the 20. When it goes to a store at one of the record stores, it's the other way around. They get $1 or $2 and the record store gets all the rest of the money. So I always tried to support these people and to understand that I've been a musician over 50 years, but to travel and go on the road and go and go and go, we would play 6 nights, 5 45-minute sets a night. And on our day off, we'd drive from maybe Waterloo, Iowa, or Columbia, Missouri to Philadelphia. And that's why routing is so important. We probably would have been better to stay in Windsor like a lot of the artists, write songs, record songs, do your own material, and really try and get somewhere with it. But we did what was really nice, the musicians, I can't say, and I know I'm going to forget some of the folks here in Windsor, but what's really nice is that they've always been charitable wise to help the community. And so the Federation of Musicians, the union, so to speak, here in Windsor had always put on a big bandstand, they called. And they would have all the local groups in all the different rooms. And then they would bring in Woody Herman, Artie Shaw, the big band, Buddy Rich, big band. And that went on till about 1994 was the last year that they did that. But I got tired of going to wakes for other musicians and obviously happy to support those. But the nightclub owners would have the waitresses donate their tips. And the bartenders or the owners of the bar would contribute a couple $100 to the family. And I said, gee whiz, we're donating. You didn't have room for us to play. We're donating that much money. And you got all the profit from having a full house all night. So I said, wouldn't it be nice, instead of having playing at a wake, this one chap had a very good friend of mine passed away. And I said, let's do a celebration of life. So back in the original days in the 60s, they had a chap, the Bacon Man, Ernie the Bacon Man, and he would, Ernie Lamont, he would do band contests for the teenage band kids. And it was terrific. And after we won the first one, he said, well, now we're starting a new one. You can come back again. And I goes, oh no, we got a trophy for this one. Now we get paid. So we went into nightclubs to get paid. So fast forward to 1994, I said, I think it'd be nice to have all the bands go together, not a battle of the bands, a celebration of bands, and take the money and give 100% to charities. And so that's what we did. We recreated bands for the charity and had the people come back and recreate their bands from yesteryear. And it turned out to be a gigantic success. There were approximately 2,000 people showed up for the event. It got a lot of publicity and made some great money, and did that for 3 years. Well, if anybody ever knows, if you want somebody to get something done, you ask a busy person, because that's the only way you get it done. Well, people come up to me and they said, they should have a Hall of Fame for people in Windsor. There's so many, Shania Twain and all these different bands. And I go, well, that's not a bad idea. Maybe you should do that. And of course, nobody ever took up that mission. So back about maybe 12 or 13 years now, I said, well, nobody's doing that, but I said, I'd like to take a different twist on it. So many people here in our community in Windsor and Essex County, and I'm sure it's the same in Sault Ste. Marie and Alberta and Ottawa. I said, why don't we have a music recognition awards and give it to the people that have taken their God-given talents and use that to make the community a better place. And let's recognize these people. So of course you can't all of a sudden, it's like Baseball Hall of Fame, you get 2 or 3 people in per year. But I started up this Windsor Music Recognition Awards, of course, a charitable event, and the money went to hospice and ALS and various charities, and acknowledged approximately 160 musicians here in Windsor and Essex County. One chap had played about 50 years. He was just the decade ahead of me. And he came over, he was a school teacher by profession, but a fabulous musician, drummer. And he goes, I've done stuff for over 50 years, and I never did it for any kind of recognition or anything. But he goes, this is the nicest thing that ever happened to me. We just put one gentleman in, 88 years old, a trumpet player. His name is Kevin Masterson. And he takes his trumpet and out with him all over. So when he shops, he goes to McLaren Photo Lab. He'll go to another store. He takes out his trumpet and starts playing. So one day I go to McLaren Photo Lab to have some pictures. I have to Photoshop. They take all the wrinkles out. And I go to the Photoshop, and he's there playing his trumpet, doesn't see me. He's playing Summertime. And so I walk in and I start singing Summertime, and it sort of freaked him out. He turned around and never had that happen before. But 88 years old. And the thing is, with this COVID, tough times in COVID, it's changed, it turned the world upside down. But I said, you know, I'm not going to let COVID change me. I'm going to do something. I want to make this productive, and I want to do something. And I was taking French online. I got 1 year of French in, and I do need a teacher. And they probably want me to wear a mask even if COVID wasn't here. They'd say, can you put a mask on, please? But I went out and got me a piano and started playing piano. And I said, I'm going to do piano, and I'm going to do some other things, and I'm going to research bands, and I want to find out more about the music community and all the pictures and sort at them all. And it's really helped the time go by quickly. And it's never too late when I sit down with they had a fellow that was the voice of Windsor, the voice of Windsor. You can imagine this young fellow at KFC, Knights of Columbus, teen dances. And he would introduce my band and say, and here we go. He was a couple of years younger than myself. Finally, he used to practice in front of a TV set. His name was Cam Gardner. He would practice in front of the TV set to be an announcer. And I goes, wow, that is incredible. And unfortunately for him, quite a few years ago now, he went on a cruise for the radio station and was stricken with diabetes. And it really overtook him. And it ended up that he lost his sight, couldn't read a book, couldn't watch a television, very tough. He had a double amputation, lost both his limbs. So I know the mayor, actually it's the mayor of Windsor's birthday today, Drew Dilkins. And there's a picture of him and I at the FBI Academy about a couple of years ago. And so we were chatting, and it was determined that he gives out keys to the city, and thought that it would be a good idea to give Cam Gardner a key to the city. And unfortunately for Cam, he got the key to the city, the voice. He was there at 911 on the radio. Everybody knew Cam. Everybody loved Cam. Wonderful man. He got the key to the city, and a couple of weeks later, he passed away. But the nice part about that is that he got the key to the city and was recognized. I was going to bring my band in to play at the senior home, and they said, no, can't do that. And COVID's on and all the difficult times. So the moral of the story is, I said, well, I'll bring my guitar, my little acoustic guitar, and I'll bring my granddaughter. My granddaughter gets upset with me sometimes because I say, Paisley, we need a song. And if it wasn't a big snow blizzard on tonight, I would have brought her to do a little tune. And my favorite song is You Are My Sunshine. And so we got to play that song for Cam. They said, but you have to stay 25 feet away or whatever it was. You have to wear it. Can you sing with a mask? I goes, oh, I got a big mouth. I can sing with a mask. And so we did that song for him. And the nice part is now I play the piano and I can have the grandchildren come over, and I'm just sort of going through the songs and going through slowly, but it's nice to be able to do that. And you're never too old to take up an instrument, get some guitar lessons. I worked at Long McQuaid Music after retiring as a policeman, and I would get so many people coming in, seniors coming in. I've retired now. I've always wanted to play music, never had an opportunity. They buy harmonicas, they buy guitars and pianos, all kinds of instruments, and sign up for lessons and just take it on their own as she goes. And really, really encourage people to, everybody watching tonight, I encourage you to take up a hobby, take up something new. And this COVID is going to be over before we know it. And hopefully we'll be better for it. So piano lessons is a really, really good thing. And you may even want to do recordings. I had a cute one. this one charity we always do for the Cancer Society. The lady called me up and she goes, I know it's COVID, but could you come over and could you do a video on Zoom for happy birthday to my sister? Said, no, I can't do that. I'm not too good with videos and things, but I'll come over. So I brought my granddaughter with me. We went over and sang the song, Happy Birthday, but it starts out, instead of happy birthday, it's the old gray mare, she ain't what she, and then we go into happy birthday. I want to make them suffer. And so we had a good time. She wanted to pay me, but I said, no, that's okay. The fun that we had for doing that was wonderful. And because my dad was in the Army and in wars and different things, I said, wouldn't it be nice? The Legions are going through some tough times. So let's do Legions on tour. So we took our band and we offered a free night of entertainment. They could have 50s night, Fonzie night. They could have anything they wanted, disco night. And we would come in and play for free. And we went around to all the Legions and donated. And we played every Legion in Windsor and Essex County, except for one. And they had another event that night. But I always stressed when I used to go out and see students and do law classes and civics classes. It's sort of selfish because when you do good deeds like that, where you play a benefit for ALS and you're able to do it for free and donate a few $1,000s to them, it's selfish because you look in the mirror and you say, oh, I feel so good and I'm so happy that they want to do that. And it connects young people. And the same thing with seniors, connecting with each other. It's amazing that you can come up with new ideas. People have taken up jigsaw puzzles. They've taken up card games. They've taken up so many different hobbies. And I think that's a really good thing. And when they called me for this event tonight to come and do the history of rock and roll, we're talking like from Count Basie, going back in the day to, and I was lucky enough to see Count Basie, not at the Amherstburg Hotel, but in Detroit, with a singer named Peggy Lee. And he was pretty phenomenal. But they wanted me to talk about the bars, and things have changed. They've all turned into medical facilities. Tear the bar down and build a medical facility. And it's been a rough go for musicians. And I look back at when I was talking, like I say, my first gig, one of my first gigs with Stevie Wonder, $25. And it was only $5 for me, $25 for the whole band. And you see Mitch Ryder in the 70s, he was getting next to nothing. Chryslers were making more money than Mitch Ryder, and they stole all the music from these people. It's pretty terrible how they manipulated all the entertainers from, well, not all of them, but a lot of them. And I encourage you, if you get a chance, there's a book out. It's called Dominic Triano, His Life is Music. Good friend of mine, he played with Burton Cummings in the Guess Who, and his brother decided to do a tribute to Dominic. Dominic wrote TV shows, Night Heat, Top Cops. He was doing 4 shows a week for Canada. He's in the Canadian Hall of Fame. He's in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. They were kind enough, they had 180 quotes from various musicians, David Clayton Thomas, and so many of great musicians. I was very honored that I was part of that. They asked me for a quote, and I got a special thank you in the book. And it sold out its first publishing, and now it's out again. Once again, Dominic Triano, His Life is Music. And he was instrumental in bringing, he played with Diana Ross and Joe Cocker, so many people. So I hope this time has gone by pretty quick. And I'm very grateful they let me do it at home without a COVID mask. I didn't mind scaring you folks, even though it wasn't Halloween. And one other thing I'd like to just demonstrate before we close, and I want to thank you so much for the support and tuning in. Cobra Kai. Is anybody out there? I imagine maybe some people have seen the Cobra Kai.
Love it, love it, love it, love it.
Love the show.
Yeah.
They had the story of Cobra Kai. It's done by Will Smith, and they recreated the Karate Kid.
Mhm.
So my granddaughter she likes Johnny Lawrence. He's an anti-hero. She likes him when he was a teenager, but now he's 50 or something. And so Ralph Macchio, wax on, wax off. And so she says, oh, we have to watch this movie together, the final episode together. And there's a fellow there that's Hawk. And so he's got red hair. So I don't have red hair, but I went and got myself a new do just for that event. So the nice thing about music, it brings joy to people. I know Ian is going to want to go out and get one right away. And music brings joy to people. Laughter brings joy. And I've always tried to be an entertainer. And I make no qualms about being fantastic or being anybody special. I have fun with it. And you try and remember the people's names, and you certainly hope that they've had a good time. They say, do you always feel happy? You're always smiling. Why are you smiling? And I go, so I just feel, I do. I feel happy. And I used to go up to the steps at work, and they'd say, hey, Crazy Kenny, how you doing today? I say, I'm doing great. And so one fella come up to me, and he goes, do you always feel great? And I goes, no, sometimes I don't feel so great. But if I tell myself I feel great, that you believe it.